So I thought I would start from the very scratch on this next assignment so you can see exactly how I start here. I'm going to create a new file in FileZilla. I'm going to call the name, let's go ahead and do the student one first. Or was it students? I can't remember what you called it. Anyway, you need to look and make sure that you get the right name on it. Since I'm the instructor, I'm allowed to break the rules. Then I go into view and edit, and you can see that now I have this thing up here. And hopefully, yeah, we'll make it a little bit bigger there so that you can see what's going on. And I'll pause this while I type in my comments. Okay, as you can see, I have my PHP tag in here, and I have my initial comments typed in up at the top. Now I'm going to do something that you haven't seen before, but I think it'll make a lot of sense to you once we get going here. I'm going to include once a file called dbconfig.php. You may be saying, what is dbconfig.php? Well, it isn't yet, but it's about to become. I am going to, first of all, view edit this file, which is, oh, I guess I've already got it open. There. All right, so here is my file, and yeah, this is the only thing I need on that. So then I just copied that, is all I did. Now I'm going to create a new file here. I'm going to call it dbconfig.php. And I am then going to edit this file. I'll push this up into the corner where you can see it properly. And pause again while I type in my comment. Okay, so now you can see that I have the program description and stuff typed in up at the top here. I have my PHP tag. I always start with that. And you'll notice my purpose there. My purpose is to allow the generic database configuration information to be stored in a common location. And now I'm going to go ahead and figure out what are the pieces of information that I need. Well, I know I need my host. I know I need my database name. I know I need my username. And I know I need my password. At a minimum, I need those things. And I'm going to go ahead and put all of those in a global variable which just contains the values in a kind of an array. So I'm going to call it dbconfig. I'm going to put it in an array. I'll go ahead and close off my array here. And then I'm going to say host, and then we're going to have a value. And then I'm going to have dbname, which is going to have a value, and then I'm going to have user, which is going to have a value, and then I'm going to have name, password, which is going to have a value. This is the other reason why I'm doing it here, is because I'm not going to actually fill in that password name on screen. You all know what it is, and you can fill it out. But I'm going to go back over after I've checked to make sure that I don't have the password freely visible there. Okay, so now I have put in some information here. I went out there to my other function that I did with the DB test. If you have not gone through that tutorial yet, you should. That is the tutorial that told you how to use MySQL in a PHP context. So I went out there to my DB test file and I pulled that in, and you will notice that now I have populated this entire array. I put in the host name, I put in the DB name, I put in the user, and I put in the password. And then down here in my PDO equals new PDO, first off I had to change this to double quotes instead of single quotes. Why? Because when you have any string within single quotes in PHP, it does not interpolate variable names. You say interpolate? What does that mean? Basically, if you have $foo inside of single quotes, it will ignore it. So if you have $foo equals ABC like this, and you say $bar equals $foo, that will have the value of ABC, whereas $bar equals $foo like this, it will actually have the string $foo in there. Do you see the difference? This one has double quotes, and so it recognized this variable inside and put in the value. This one here had single quotes, and so it did not recognize it as a variable, and it put in the actual $FOO. You meant it as a variable name, but it took it as a straight string. So all of that is just so you understand the difference between single quotes and double quotes, and now you understand why I had to do double quotes here, because as soon as I do my $db config host here in order to get this value up here, and as soon as I had this $db config db name down here, if I had not changed it to double quotes, it would not have worked at all. So I now have my PDO thing here. Here I've changed what was hard-coded. I've changed it to use these variable names for the user and for the password. I haven't filled in this here, but I will change that to the actual value as soon as I've turned this off, and then we will have access to this function, dbconnect, which will give me back this connection, and then I can use this variable in my connection to do queries and to do fetches. You'll see how that works in just a moment. So I am working. I had quite a bit of a break there, so hopefully I can figure out where we were at here. I was just in the midst of having configured my db config out there, and now I have included that file in there. What this will allow me to do, two things. Number one, it makes sure that I keep my password invisible to anybody looking at this video, and that's one of the main things I'm concerned about. The second thing is it allows me to use the same database configuration, the same connection in this program as I do in the teacher program that I'm going to have in just a minute. So at this point I can say the database connection equals db connect, and I now have a connection that I can use in order to do a query. So let's see what it is we have to do once we've got this. I'm going back to my old db test. That's what I did in the previous tutorial, and you'll notice I still have the old password in here, so I'm not worried about that being given away. But basically what I've done is I've done this part right here. This line has been accomplished in this over here with this line right here. Okay, so it's a little bit more complicated. I use 2 lines instead of 1 line, and I have a whole nother script out there. The advantage, as I've said, I can reuse the same information, and then if I change my password, I don't have to go through in 100 different files and change every one of them, but it's just in one place. And also I can keep the security just in one place and don't have to worry about getting it in many places. So now let's do the same kind of thing that I was doing here and make sure that it works. So I copy this down. I'm going to change this to the PDO so that I don't have to change the thing there. And I will save this. I will go back over to FileZilla, put it up here, and then we'll go back over to here and go to peter.qdk db/student.php and see what comes up. And a remarkable big fat lot of nothing has come up, which is not exactly what I was hoping for. So let's see what's going on. Let's give ourselves some upload it here, and then we'll reload, and we're not getting anything at all. So I'm not quite sure what that means. Let me make sure that it's not just a problem of naming. So maybe I'm at the wrong place. Maybe this was maybe this is was supposed to be PLB instead of Peter. Is that where I was? At the top. There we go. Okay, I just had the wrong domain there. I've got a peter.qdk.org and I've also got a PLB. I'm in the PLB. So now my debug comes up there, but then it says call to undefined function dbconnect in line 12. So let's see what I've got. Okay, after putting in just a couple of seconds of debug put in there, I put a debug at the top. It still didn't come up, and it turned out that instead of using plb.qdk.org, I was using peter.qdk.org. I just had my wrong domain. Once I come in here, I see I've got the call to the undefined function dbconnect. Now that's what I thought I named the function in my other one, but I'm going to go over there and see if I named it something different. Because I don't want to show you, I'm going to shut things off first. Okay, I checked, and in fact that was the name of the function. So I've re-uploaded it. Okay, that's what the problem was. I just hadn't uploaded it by FileZilla. So now it gives me an uncaught exception, PDO exception, with the message SQL state no such file or directory in dbconfig.php line 19. PDO construct MySQL null dbconnect main thrown in on line 19. Okay, not quite sure what this error is. No such file or directory. Somehow it's not recognizing that I have a dbconfig file out there. No, that's not accurate, because it's line 19 of dbconfig that it's complaining about. Okay, so we're on dbconfig line 19. Sorry, I've got to shut this off again so I don't display my password all over the internet. Okay, just so you know what I'm doing here, I'm trying to trace down this error. The error that I got is this uncaught exception, PDO exception with message such and such, no such file or directory. And so I thought, well, since most of what I'm doing is just straight from dbtest, let me see if dbtest works. And I went over and ran it. It gave me a similar error, but it said access denied, which reminded me that I hadn't changed my password yet. So then I went in and changed the password, uploaded it again, and this time it seems to be working just fine. So I'm going to spend some more time thinking and then come back and let you know. Okay, now I've figured out what the problem is. It was actually, if you'll notice here in the error message, it was saying, here is the construct, which is what you call when you do a new. So when we said new PDO, it calls the construct, and so it was doing it, and this is what it was passing. MySQL : host equals, and then it wasn't putting the host in there. It was host equals nothing, followed by a semicolon, and then dbn ... Well, that tells me that whatever I was putting in there after the equals and before the semicolon is not being recognized. What am I using? I'm using dbconfig host. Oh, now I see what's going on. I am using a global variable dbconfig, and I did not register it as a global. PHP does not look for a variable as being a global variable unless you explicitly say, I want to use this as a global variable. If you don't explicitly say, I want this to come from global, then it just creates a local variable. This has to do with variable scoping, and it means that I can use any variable name I like within my function name without being afraid that it's the same variable name that I used in another function somewhere else. And so they're private or local variables. In this case, I want to use the same variable outside, that's declared outside of my function as a global. I want to use it inside, so I have to explicitly name it using this global dbconfig at the top of my function. Actually, I think I can put it anywhere in the function, but you always put it at the top. So now I save this and I send it across, and hopefully we will get the access error with the wrong password. Now it says uncaught exception, PDO exception, with the message access denied for user. All right, and so it doesn't like the password that I've got, which is understandable because that's not the correct password. I have this my secret in here just so that I can do it without any difficulty. So now I will shut you off, change it to the real password, and be back in just a minute. Okay, so we will go ahead and upload it now that I've changed it to the right password. Bring it over here, and we will bring it up again. And now my function from the student.php is working. We are actually selecting the names. Now, let's think about what it is we're trying to do. We are wanting students to be able to select their own name from a drop-down list. And what I have right now is I have a list of last names and first names, but I'm getting them from teachers. I don't want it from teachers. I want it from students. So let's see what goes here. We will upload that. Refresh. Call to a member function fetch on a non-object. It did not like that on line 21. Let's try refreshing again. Maybe I was a bit too quick. No, still complaining. Okay, so student.php on line 21, it's while row statement fetch. So the statement is not getting loaded with the query. That's very strange. This is the kind of thing that you run into and I have this select lname, fname from students, order by fname, lname, ID. You know what I didn't do? I didn't check to see if there was an error. I'm going to have to go out and see with PHP PDO errors. I've got to find out if there's an error, because I remembered somebody, I think his initials are Joshua Choi, renamed my columns from being fname and lname, which is the standard names for them, into f_name and l_name. So that's what the problem is. But what this tells me is I should really be looking for, I should be responding to errors that come up in here. So if I've got a PDO thing here, errors and error handling, how do I do this? It gives me 3 different error handling strategies. It will simply set the error code for you to inspect using PDO : error code. And that works for me. Let's see what that does. So example 1, we're going to go in here, try, I don't want to do that. That's a pain in the neck if I have to do that every time. Let's see if there's a different way to do it. Example number 1, example number 2, create a PDO instance and set the error mode from the constructor. Yeah, I don't like that try stuff. It's too much of a pain in the neck. But maybe that's what we're going to have to do. Okay, so we've got to try what we're doing and then catch it with the PDO exception $E. So I am going to go ahead, shut you off a minute and change that password back. It looks like there's no nice way to do this. I guess I've usually just surrounded all of my calls to the PDO in other functions, so I don't have to bother with this. But we're going to have to surround it in a try, and then what is it we're going to try? We're going to try this, and then how do you do it? You try, and then you catch, and then it's a PDO exception, $E, and then what are we going to do with it? We are going to echo bad statement, and then what is it, $E message? Yeah. $E get message. So what this is doing is it's saying, go ahead and do this query, try it. See the try up here? Try what's in the braces here, which is what? It's just simply a statement equals PDO arrow query. So try to make this query, and if you can't, if you run into problems, catch the errors, and the error will be in the $E variable, and then I can print the error of the message here and then go on and see what we're going to do. So let's see how that works, and we will go ahead and upload it, and we will come back over here and load it. And we're getting the same results as we were before. We've got to somehow make it do something that we didn't want to do. Alright, so if it starts off and it says that the normal way of handling it is silent, it will simply set the error code on both the statement and database objects. Okay, well, can do this differently. So PDO : error code. I think that is done like this. So I'm getting rid of what I did before, and I'm saying if $PDO error code, then do this, and we're going to use the PDO error info. I'm not sure. It's been a while since I started off a project. Once you get your framework of a project in place, you don't actually access these underlying functions. So it's been some time since I actually used them, and I'm going to upload and see if that solves the problem or not. It says bad statement : array. All right, so our printing of this is somewhat less than effective. So I'm going to do this print R business that I always do in order to print off the value of the array. Go ahead and upload my file. Come over here and bring it off again. Unknown column L name in field list. All right, so that is the error that we got. And you recall all of this was in order to find the error that I already knew what it was, based on that certain unnamed student's change in our column names. So my SQL should not be L name and F name, but instead should be L underscore name and F underscore name. So I'm going to change this and this and this, and then see what happens. Go ahead and upload it. And hopefully this is encouraging to you to see that errors are a very, very normal part of what's doing programming. It's just a normal thing coming out. Now you'll see I've still got a bad statement. Well, that's very interesting. I'm not quite sure how I was supposed to check that because it wasn't a bad statement. Let's print the... I'm just going to give a little bit more information here to see what's going on. And all this is just so that we can successfully handle errors moving on into the future here. So bad statement 0000. Okay. So what it is this 0000 is not something that is actually an error, but all of those zeros there should be interpreted as a regular zero, but because it's a string, it's not being interpreted correctly. I can convert this into a number simply by adding 0 to it, and I think that that will solve it, but let's see. And we've got some other errors that I saw coming up there, but we're going to handle these errors one at a time because that's what a good programmer does. All right, that took care of our error. I added the number 0 to the string quote 00000 unquote, and that converted quote 00000 unquote into the number 0, and 0 plus 0 is 0, and 0 is the same as a Boolean false. And so in our code over here, when we said if PDO error code plus 0, and now it's a 0. So if false, do this, but since it's a false, it's not doing that anymore. So we no longer have this situation where it's printing off the bad statement. We don't have a problem. Let's move on down and find out where our next error is. We're going through the rows several times, but as I print them off, I am printing, and I've got this L name, F name problem again, this time in my array rather than my other thing, rather than in my SQL, but I have to fix that as well, because when we changed the column names in our SQL, it also changed the indices into our array. So now I've upgraded, I come back over here and I run it, and now I have all the names of all the students. Let's see if we can't make this into a pull down. What do we have to do in order to make it into a pull down? First of all, we have to be within a form. something there, and then I'll close off my form at the end. And then we also have to have a select statement and several options. So I'm going to say select name equals student ID, and then we're going to bring this down here, close it off. So now if we ran this, we would have a form, the opening of a select and the closing of a select. Now instead of just echoing L name, F name, we've got to do it like this. We've got to say, did we remember to get our ID? No, we never got our ID here. So we've got to have our ID and then our L name and our F name. And we are going to say option ID equals $row ID, and I should put that in quotes, and then what I'm actually printing there, which can be like that, and then I've got to close off my option, and I'll show you what that looks like in code in just a moment. Alright, let my family in the door, so now we're going to upload this to the server, and we will refresh this screen and see what it is that comes in. Well, lo and behold, it looks like we have a pull down, and when I pull it down I see all these, and let's go ahead and press Control U to see what kind of HTML source we have here.
I'm so awesome.
Form. Thank you, son Christopher. We have form, follow the beginning of our select, and the name of our select is student ID. I really should put quotes around this to be properly formed HTML. And then I have option ID equals, oh, I've got 7 with one quote, but I don't have the other quote. So that's definitely bad form there. I definitely want to fix that. So let me put that here and upload that. That's just too egregious not to fix. So I'll update my source here, HTML source. Now all of my IDs, these are my student IDs here, and then whatever I've printed here becomes the contents of my option that I've pulled down, and then I close off my option, I close off my select at the very end, and close off my form. So now I've just got to do a little bit of formatting to make this a little bit prettier. I'm not really interested in putting the L name equals and the F name equals. Now we'll upload this and go ahead and back over here. I'm no longer interested in my HTML source. I'm going to refresh this, and now our students can come in and they can choose whatever student they want to do. Now all I've got to do is give myself a submit button here. Okay, and close it off. Now if you've been paying attention, you'll notice that I've got double quotes inside double quotes, so I have to escape that with a backslash. And now update that, and we will see that I now have a submit button, and unfortunately I didn't put an action, but let's see what happens if I do a submit. It says student ID equals Smith, comma Jack. That's not at all what we wanted, was it? Because we wanted to use that ID there. So it's it's not ID, excuse me, it's value. I used the wrong name here. Value equals this. So upload it again, and go ahead and bring this in and choose a student. Coleman, let's try you this time. Submit, and now we say student ID equals 9. If we reveal our codes here, we see that Coleman is in fact value equals 9. So we're good. We now have student.php in a working format, other than the fact that we have to figure out how to do the action in the form. But we'll figure that out after the break. Okay, so moving on now, we've got to give ourselves a name for this submit statement so that we can then use we'll call it student submit, and we'll say the value equals 1. Notice every time I put in these double quotes, if I'm within double quotes, I have to, excuse me, yeah, that's right, sorry. Notice I've got the quotes here, double quotes at the beginning of my echo statements and double quotes at the end of my echo statement. If I put a double quote in the middle here without putting a backslash in front of it, then echo will interpret that as the end of the string which was started here. And then it will end that, and then I'll get all kinds of syntax errors. So every time I put in a double quote in here, I have to precede it with a backslash in order to say, hey, this is not a normal double quote, this is just used for a literal double quote going in the middle of the string. So now I've got the name student submit in here, and I can do something like this. Let's get rid of this debug up here. And we're going to be using the DB Connect regardless of what we do, but I can say something like this. If $request student submit, then do this, else do this, and all of this stuff down here goes in the else. Now, I do not like this. Notice, I've closed off this, but this is not what I just told you to do in class, is it? This is not correctly indented, so I'm going to indent the whole thing. I think, yeah. So I indent everything and then outdent those 2 lines. So I now have everything indented here, and it's very clear to me that this line that's starting at this level is finished off down here. There's no question how that is. Now up here, what am I going to do if request student submit? Well, in this case, let's go ahead and just say debug you pressed submit, and the student ID is, and then what did I call it? I think I just called it student underscore ID, didn't I? I see, yes, right here. Select name student underscore ID. So that's $request student ID. Oops, I don't need the single quotes there because I'm already inside this. Make that just a nicely formatted debug statement. And now let's see what we've got here. We've got to upload. And now when I update, we got rid of the debug statement, and we choose, we happen to know that Coleman is 9, so we'll go ahead and use him. Oops, I don't much like that right there, value being 1, submit. But anyway, you press submit, and the student ID is 9. I can't remember exactly what it is that you have to do. Is it label equals submit? I think that's what it is. So we'll upload this, come on over here, and oops, that's not where we need to be. We need to be here. No, that's obviously not it. Alright, so normally I would just look this up off camera, but since you guys are so interested in all this kind of stuff, we will look up HTML submit, and we'll find out what is the actual thing that I'm supposed to be using. And it should be input elements, type fields, password, radio button, submit button. Input type equals submit, and value equals submit. Oh. I thought that the value is something else. Anyway, okay, so we'll just make the value submit. That'll work. So do like that, get rid of that, save it, pull it up, come over here to this, reload it. Now we've got a nicely done submit button, and we see if we pull up Smith, Jack, now we have an ID of 4 rather than an ID of 9. And you can see that this seems to be working well. We are accepting the action within the student.php because in here, in here when we said form, we didn't say action equals something, and so it defaults to just submitting it onto itself. Let's go ahead and just be clear about that so that there's no doubt in anybody's mind. All right, same thing. I'm not changing any action here. I'm just being very clear how it is. And let's go ahead and say method equals get, so that we end up with just a little bit clearer kind of a designation there in our form attribute. So now it appears that we have a good form allowing the user to select their thing. Now we've got a very simple process of taking this same student ID and selecting in a very similar way to what we just did, just using a slightly different select ID, selection statement. So rather than saying that we've got this, we're going to say select equals select, we don't need the ID. We do want the L name and the F name from the student, but we also want what? We want the name, classes dot name, and we want the class, oh no, the period dot start time. Is that all we were going to print? Oh no, we wanted the teacher dot F name and the teachers dot L name, and I forgot the S there. So those are all the things that I'm going to select, and it's always a good idea to specify where this is coming from, which field. So this is students.lname and students.fname, and where are we going to select it from? We're going to select it from students and classes and periods and teachers and class map are all the ones that I need to do. As I was typing that in, I noticed that I was missing an S up here. If you miss anything like that, it's just one more time around the block where you have to go through and specify it. So the more errors you can find by carefully looking at your code and typing exactly what you mean, the better off you are in the long run. So now we're select, we've got all our fields there, we're doing them from students, classes, periods, teachers, and class map. Now I've got to get my where statement to pull all those together. You've already done this work, but this is my thinking as I'm producing this. So where, I've got to tie students into the class map. So I'm going to say students.id equals classmap.studentID. Now, students will only come in when we're in the appropriate thing for class map. And let's do classes. Classes.id equals classmap.classesID. So now we've got classes appropriately tied to class map. Now we've got to tie periods to classes. So I'm going to say and periods.id equals classes.periodID. Now I've got to tie teachers into classes, so I'm going to say and teachers.id equals classes.teacherID. Now the only thing that I haven't done at this point is I have not said that I'm only interested in a single student. And I am only interested in a single student. So let's go ahead and say and students.id equals, now I've got to put it in quotes. Oh no, I don't. This is a number. It's a number, so I don't need to put it in quotes. So students ID equals request student ID. And I didn't need those quotes in there because I'm already in the context of a quote. Okay, so I've got this. Now I have an SQL, and I'm too lazy. Oops, I'm too lazy to go ahead and type this in. So I'm going to pull all this stuff back up, and I'm going to say echo my dynamic SQL query is, and print my SQL. So that's just a debug statement. Better to put a debug in front of it just to be clear. Oops. So I've got a debug statement there, and then I do my actual query, and then I'm going to, I check my error code, and then I have a while statement here to run through all of my values here. While row equals statement fetch, do what? Do this. Let's go ahead and echo, we've got to do a header on the very first one. So You know what, that's going to be too complicated. It's not too complicated, but it's going to be too complicated for you listening to me. So I'm just going to echo a row for each one. For each one, I'm going to say, tr, and then close tr, and then actually let's back and we'll just do this a line at a time to keep it simple. All right, so we're going to start by doing a row, and then for each cell within that row, we're going to say echo TD, and then what do we want? We want our first name and our last name. Oh no, let's do the class name first. So that's going to be $row name, and close out that one, and then I'm going to copy that cell and change it from name. The next thing is going to be, let's give it teacher. So that's going to be let's put it in let's put F name and then a space and then L name, and then I'll copy my name down here again, and we will do the start time. So now we should have a name, F name, start name. We have to obviously start our table up here and end our table down here. But at this point, we should say start a new table, and for each row that we find in this selection statement that we've got, we should be able to echo starting a row, echo out 3 cells, close the row, and then finally, after we finish all of our rows, echo out the table. Now, I just did a lot of work. I fully expect that I'm going to have errors that occur as I go in here, and I'm just going to have to fix those out. I should have done a smaller step rather than doing all of that all at once. But let's see what we have for student 4. My dynamic SQL query is select students.lname, students F name, class name, period, start time, teachers F name, teachers L name from. That all looks good to me. That all works, okay? But I get a bad statement. The error is 42S22. You notice how handy it is that I am actually printing off my error statements. If I had not put in that special if clause over here to actually check when I've made an error, then I just would have gotten no response down there. It would have been a regular pain in the neck. So what do we have here? The error code, and it's saying that the thing unknown column class map dot classes underscore ID in the where clause. Well, what did we call it if we didn't call, I bet it was just class ID. Okay, classes ID, get rid of that, make it just class ID, and oops, we will upload that again, and now pull this in. Aha. Now, I only have a single class that's been put in there, but it's possible that since this was a weird student, that maybe, that was just one of my little test students I put in there, I'm going to go ahead and change it to 9. And notice, rather than going back and going through all the effort, I'm just going up and editing my URL up there and saying, do the same thing, but do it for Coleman rather than for somebody else. I remember Coleman's number because we were just using him in the testing. So now I pull this down, and voila, we now have all of Coleman's classes coming down here. Now, this is largely done. Let's go ahead and do a couple of things different. We haven't put in a heading at the top of things, so I'm going to do that. Now, I have to wait until I've fetched my first row, but unfortunately, by the time I've fetched my first row, I've already put in my table statement. So I'm going to have to do something different here. I'm going to have to put my table statement within my row, within my while loop. What's the problem with that? Oh, well, all of a sudden, now my table begin tag in HTML is going to be done many, many times. Here's how we'll fix that. We'll say first equals true, and then if first, do this, and $first equals false. You see what that does? we set first to be true to say we're on the first time through, and then we do our row, we fetch our row, and then we say, is this the first time through this loop? If so, then start our table and mark first as false, so that the next time when I come to the top of my loop here, it's going to say if first. Is it? Nope, first is now false because I said it right here, so it won't echo my table again. What this does is it gives me the capability of doing something like this, where I can echo H1, well, H2. For some reason they tell me in HTML it's better not to use H1. That's somehow, I forget, there's something you're not supposed to do. So anyway, we'll use H2 for this, and we will echo schedule for row, okay, and this is F underscore name, again because of that funny renaming that we've got where it's not F name and L name but underscore. So now we've got row F underscore name and row L underscore name. I will save this and upload it and refresh, and now we have schedule for Coleman Dill. And if I look at my source here, I've got this H2 schedule for Coleman Dill. The table is only repeated once. It's not repeated at the top of every row. Now the only other thing that would be nicer for me is if we had some borders on this table. So let's very quickly put some borders on the table. Put a border out there. That's actually not, you're supposed to put quotes around it, but it's too much of a pain in the neck right now when I'm just trying to do it quickly. So I'll refresh this, and now we have a schedule for Coleman Dill. Looks to me like this program is almost done. I am going to go back over here, get rid of my debug statement, which was here. I'm going to get rid of my debug statement down here. And let's do some final testing to see if this is going to work. So we go to student.php, and oh, I forgot to upload. So now I pull this up, and it no longer gives me my debug statement there. So let's choose Joshua Choi and submit. And we see Joshua's classes here. ICT Honors, English, Math, Coordinated Science, Modern World History. That looks good. If we choose a different student here, let's go ahead and choose Tim Schock and submit. Then we have a whole different set here. You'll notice that I don't have all the nice stuff that you guys did. In Tim's case, no, it's not quite in order here. It would be nice if we had this in order by the start time. And obviously if I want to put it in order by the start time, it's just not a big deal. I just come up here where I'm putting in my select statement, and at the very end of it I say order by, and then what do I want to do? I want to order by start time. And it would be better if I said periods.start time, so that it's better to just be clear about where you're getting these fields from by using that table name dot as a prefix each time. So we will upload, and this time when we bring this in, you'll notice now it puts everything in order by starting time. And that completes the first part of this assignment.